Hello everyone, I hope you all are doing well. This side Priya Bhatia. And in this specific video, we will continue our discussion with respect to the concepts of deep learning. I think in the introductory part of the very first video, I have talked about that what is deep learning, why it is required, right? What is the purpose of using the deep learning algorithms? What are the applications for the same? I think you get the gist of it. And now in this specific video, the main objective is to discuss about the history and evolution of deep learning. You must have one question that Priya, why is this important? Let's target towards discussing about the algorithms, its implementation, its mathematical intuition. Why the historical thing you are talking about? Why it is actually important? What is the purpose of this video? The simple thing is you will observe that deep learning is not something which comes up very soon. Many people think that because nowadays we have lot many applications of deep learning, so this is something which is coming up in 2000 maybe 6 7 or 8 or 18, but it's not like that. It's a 1950s 1960s 1980s you will observe that already the concepts of deep learning came up, but why they were not that much famous. Initially boom happened, then fallback happened, then again boom happened. So what are the challenges which researchers have faced, and how researchers have overcome that, and why today it is quite frequently used? This is something which I want to talk about in this video. So I will definitely tell you that if you will watch this video till the very end, you will find it quite insightful, and you will be able to observe that any big success comes after a lot of challenges. Be it your any domain you are working with, you will observe that this deep learning success also comes after lot many challenges. So what are those? Let's try to talk about that in today's video. So with this, let's get started. I hope that you can clearly see on my screen that we have a diagram, and you will be able to observe that this journey is not started very recently. You can clearly observe in this picture in 1940s or 1943 exactly, the term of artificial neuron came into picture, right? And afterwards, there is a lot of stuff happened in the history of deep learning. I will talk about few interesting stuffs out of the whole picture. But again, this is one of the most interesting picture which I ever found in the on the web. So here you can see, right? This Rosenblatt have come up with the idea of perceptron, right? That is where birth of AI in 1956 happened after Turing test, and perceptron concepts came into picture. I will talk about all of these things in a lot more detail in the upcoming sessions. So might be few of the stuffs you felt like maybe jargon for you, but whatever things you can be able to understand, please try to grab that as much as you can. That's what I can say from my part for now, right? So this concept of perceptron, which comes at the very first part where the deep learning comes into picture, this concept said that we can learn we can learn with the help of weights. So here we will be having the input features, right? Here we will be having, right, input features. We will be having the weights x1, x2, x3. We will be having the weights w1, w2, w3, and all of those weights combined together in this specific layer, where we will say x1 w1 plus x2 w2 plus x3 w3. It will combine together to form somehow, I would say, a linear equation. I hope everyone understand this is nothing but is a linear equation, right? And with the help of which we will be able to get some result. And before that, they have used something called as activation functions to get the final result. I will talk about all of these things in a lot more detail as we progress towards this module, but that is where you will be able to get, if it's a classification problem, the result as either 1 or 0. If it's a regression problem, you will be able to get the exact, let's say, house price prediction. But this is how basically the things got started. The problem came into picture where we will be having the linear equations, and it would be very easy for the researchers to classify the linear boundaries, right? So when this concepts of perceptron came into picture, there was, I would say, a huge success in the era of deep learning space. And that is where at that point of time, means the time of 1957, there was quite a boom, right? With respect to multiple applications of deep learning, people start talking about that. But afterwards, in 1969, if you can see, there was a problem called as XOR problem comes into picture. What this problem says? This problem says that if, let's say, you will be having a function which is a linear function, then it is very easy to do a classification task. And that is where the concept of perceptron, the concept of deep learning, the concept of neural network comes into picture, which is quite fine. And by the way, this term where we are doing this kind of calculation is called as feed forward in the, I would say, conceptual understanding of deep learning. Now, what problem comes into picture is that, for example, let's say we will be having a OR function. So if you know the truth table of OR function, you know that if, let's say, you will be having two input values, 0 and 1, the result will be 1. 1 and 1, the result will be 1. 1 and 0, the result will be 1. 0 and 0, the result will be 0. If you have these kind of equations, it's quite easy to plot that, how the plotting will happen. So you can clearly see that maybe if we will be having the answer as 0 or the answer will be 1. Input value is here it will be, you can see the diagram, it will be 0, right? Input value, and it will be 1. So when we will be having the answer as 0 and 0, the answer will be 0. When we will be having the value as 0 and 1, the answer will be 1, right? When we will be having the value as 1 and 0, the answer will be 1, right? So here you can see that at every instant, 1 and 0, the answer will be 1. It's quite easy to do the classification task because all the points, 3 points are towards the, I would say, right extreme, and the 0 point is below at this specific layer. So it's very easy to draw this best fit line. In other words, I would say it's very easy to curate a best fit line in this specific scenario. And I would say this is one of the easy task or easy functions, right? Linear functions, I would say, is one of the easier functions, and the models that we're trying to curate, it's quite easy for the model to understand these kind of patterns. But the problem comes into picture at that duration of 1969, which we call as XOR problem, when we see that this XOR truth table contains a non-linear function. Now, I'm not sure how many of you will be easily able to understand the concepts of non-linear function, but I will try to explain you in a very layman way. If you will see the truth table of XOR, so I am expecting that you know these truth table. This is the input value, you can say I1. This is the input value I2. This is the output O. Or I would say this is the result. Right? So when we're talking about XOR, when we will be having I1, I2, and when we will be having the final result as, I would say, O, or you can say output. So what is happening in these kind of situations? We will be having again 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, and 1, 1. So if you know the truth table of all of these factors, so what you will be able to understand is 0, 0 is 0, 1, 1 is 0, 0, 1 is 1, and 1, 0 is also 1. So if we try to curate this again in a plot where in the input side also we have 0, 1, in the output side also we have 0 and 1. So what we are saying is 0, 0 is 0, 0, 1, 1 is also 0, right? 1, 1 is also 0. So we have one thing is here and another thing is here, right? 0, 1 is 1 and 1, 0 is also 1. Now in this specific aspect, it's quite difficult to plot a single line which will be easily able to separate these points. See, in this case, it's quite easy because there are 3 points. One is this, one is this, one is this. And if I want to classify these green points with a white point, it's quite easy to curate one single best fit line and we will be able to classify it. But the problem comes when we will be having this non-linear functionality where we want to classify these kind of points where we cannot curate a single line. It's not feasible, right? It's not easy. I have one more image to explain you the same concept if I can showcase you. So if I will just try to pick this up below, I think this is also, another understanding which I think you will be able to understand what I'm trying to convey over here. This is the kind of a thing where you can see that this is a linear graph, linear line, right? If let's say you want to maybe differentiate between this red points with this green points, so can you differentiate it via a single line? Is it possible? If you will try to create at any instant, maybe if you will say maybe I will plot here like this, there can be multiple lines possible, but you can clearly understand and maybe you can clearly tell me that Priya, we cannot design a single line over here, a linear line over here, which will be able to classify this red dots with the green dots. And that is where non-linear functions comes into picture, which will be able to design these kind of, you can say, easily see, right, graph. And always remember, whenever we will be having a arbitrarily complex data points, right? So in that case, we need to use complex functions only to differentiate between the two classes. And that is where the concepts of non-linear functions will come into picture. Always remember that this concept will be taken care by the activation functions. So I will talk about that stuff in a lot more detail in a separate video when we will discuss about the activation functions. What is the purpose of that in order to give us the final output? But for now, I hope you will be able to understand that this is the problem which comes into picture in 1970s by the XOR problem. Means my model for now, whatever development had happened, won't be able to, give me the results with respect to the non-linear entities. So how the classification will happen. And that is where after that a lot many case studies happened. In 1986, I would say this is again a very good time in the era of, I would say, deep learning, where the main person I would say is Geoffrey Hinton. I think he's also called as the father of deep learning. I hope you must have heard his name. There was a research paper also that was published at that duration by the name of backpropagation weights, right? If I will try to showcase you what is the exact name of that paper, so you can see learning representation using backpropagation errors. So this was the name of the research paper. Let me copy it here, right? This was the name of the research paper which comes into picture at that specific duration, right? You can just refer at your end. So what this research paper said in 1986, the main purpose is that we can add the non-linear complexities as well by updating the weights part, right? That is where the concept of backpropagation comes into picture. That is where the concept of optimizers comes into picture. You can maybe refer this research paper as well, download it and read it out. You will be able to understand that how learning started happening for the non-linear classification part per se. But at that moment also the weights were initialized randomly. There was no as such, I would say, optimal methods that we have in at the time of 1986, where we will be able to initialize the weights in a great manner. And what researchers have observed that there were advanced algorithms in machine learning, for example, SVM, which is giving us a better result on complex data as comparable to deep learning stuff. Because the initialization, which we know at that moment, was random initialization only. After that, again in 2006, with the main role of again Gilbert Hinton, the concept of RBM initialization comes into picture, where they have talked about that how can we, in an optimized manner, initialize the weights and will be able to train our models. After that, there is no going back, I would say. In 2012, the very first, network called as AlexNet comes into picture. I still remember, right? There was a image classification task, and this specific algorithm or network, I would say, in deep learning gives a great accuracy as comparable to machine learning algorithms. And from that duration onwards, you will be able to observe the era of images, the era of training of images, working on several applications of images started, right? Face recognition, smartphones, Android, iOS, everyone started launching these kind of phones where the applications of fingerprinting, face detection, uh, you know, many more stuffs comes into picture, right? Cameras, image pixel qualities, everything, right? So wherever you will be able to observe the images working into picture, internally somehow nowadays also deep learning is something which is coming into the role, right? After that, in 2014, concept of GANs came into picture, generative adversarial networks. 2017, again a big transformation, when the creation of transformers happened. Attention is all you need is the research paper which you can refer to study about this. A complete full-fledged architecture, which again is the major factor, I would say, in terms of NLP specific tasks as well, where we will be having a textual data. We want to train our model to predict what is the next specific outcome we will be able to generate. Then at the time of 2020, GPT-3, right, generative pre-trained transformers comes into picture. And in 2022, I think now you all know we are using this specific tool like ChatGPT. After that, you can observe that there is no going back. We are in 2024, and ChatGPT, Midjourney, Gemini, Perplexity, Claude AI, there are several tools, right? Anthropic. So I can list down multiple tools that we have nowadays which we are using on a daily basis, right? To search, to research, to explore, to write down a code. GitHub Copilot is there. So everything you will be able to observe is built now on top of these specific algorithms. Complete healthcare domain, wherever you will be able to observe images are going on, CT scans detection, cancer detection, right? Diagnosing of any of the diseases. Internally, somehow some neural network is working on. It may be a convolutional neural network. Again, this is a very interesting thing happened in the era of deep learning. Maybe a known CNN based architecture, but obviously to get the complex patterns from a given data, we will always prefer to go with a deep learning specific architecture. I don't think that now when we have a complex data points, people are still using machine learning. For example, in images nowadays, I don't think any company is using machine learning architectures, machine learning models to train. Yes, if we have a numerical data, that won't be considered as a complex one. That is where people are still using machine learning architectures, for example, in banking domain. But when we have images, no company is still using deep learning. One more thing, this is all about the history and evolution of deep learning. Now, why I'm saying that we are in an era where this specific domain won't go anywhere, there are multiple reasons behind that. First thing is, in the initial past time, right, the quality of data is not good. We don't have a label data, but nowadays we have the label data. It's quite easy to get the label data very easily, right? Which was not easier in those time which I was talking about. Second important thing is resources. Nowadays, it's quite easy to have the access of resources, to have the access of GPUs, right? So many companies are doing a funding to train the model. We have the pre-trained models available on top of which we can do our stuff. So fine tuning is very easy. These are the several reasons because of which I would definitely say, and I think that deep learning now won't go anywhere. It's in a huge success, and there are several applications you see are all around the world. People are still using it, doing it, and doing a lot of research. Lot of funding is going on in these specific architectures. New things are coming up. Pre-trained models that we have, on top of that, companies are using their own data to fine tune it and use it in their own company's applications. So there is a lot more scope in this specific domain, and that is the overall idea about the history of deep learning. I hope that this specific thing gives you one lesson that things won't happen in one go. Things takes time. I would say good things takes time, right? There's a lot of patience, lot of effort, lot of research is required to get that success. You can see it's a first uh, golden age where initially new concepts of perceptron comes into picture. The second golden age is where the back propagation concept come into picture, and this is the third golden age where transformers, GPT-3, Chat GPT, Gemini, Midjourney, these kind of tools are coming into picture. And now we are in the era of third golden age, I would say. So this is the overall idea about all of these stages of deep learning. I hope you got a great lesson from that. And the last thing which I want to convey from this video is never give up. Good things takes time. Sometimes we get a peak, then fall, then peak, then fall. But at some point of time, we will all will get that appreciation for the quality of work that we are doing. That's the whole idea with respect to the journey of deep learning as well. So if someone will ask you in future onwards that whether deep learning stuff comes near in 2012, 14 or 2020, so your answer should be no. It's come in 1943, but the journey is quite long. It got success and failure, but finally we are in an era where everyone is using the applications of this deep learning domain. With this, bye bye everyone, and I'll see you all in the upcoming